Imagine this. You are a game designer. You have an amazing idea for an awesome new game mechanic. You want to put it in your game, but there's a problem. A huge problem, in fact. Your players, they aren't mind readers. They don't know how you intend for the mechanic to work. They might not even know it exists, let alone how to use it. What do? How do you convey this information to the player? Do you bash them over the head with a text box? Maybe shove a tutorial down their throats? Or do you get clever and design your level to trick your players into learning on their own? I subscribe to the idea that the best way to teach is through game design. You should only put a text box in front of a player if there's no better way to communicate an idea. I've recently been playing a game that shocks me with how well it teaches the player through gameplay. That game, of course, is Shovel Knight. When it comes to teaching a player through game design, Shovel Knight is an absolute master. Every screen on every level is crafted to guide the player to solve problems. So how does Shovel Knight do it? I'm going to break down one method in a simple 4-step formula. 1. Shovel Knight introduces a new concept to the player in a safe environment. 2. The player is tested on their knowledge of the concept. They are put in a situation where interacting with the mechanic is required for progression. 3. The concept is played with in increasingly difficult situations. 4. The concept is reintroduced with some change and the cycle repeats. To better understand how Shovel Knight teaches its players, let's take a look at an example from the first level. The very first screen, we, the player, are introduced to a dirt block up on a ledge. It obviously stands out as a separate entity from the background, level, or enemies. With enemies below the ledge, we are incentivized to jump up and avoid them. This will give us an opportunity to interact with the block. The knowledge test comes towards the end of the first screen, where we are presented with a wall of dirt blocks. We will need to use our shovel to remove the obstacle. On the very next screen, we're queued up for another lesson with 2 dirt blocks positioned vertically below the ground. We quickly notice that we can't reach them with our normal attack, but we were taught in the previous screen that we can destroy dirt blocks with our shovel. So, how do we deal with this new challenge? The position of them indicates to the player that Shovel Knight has a way to use his shovel in a downward direction. To progress, we will need to use the shovel drop. Our progress will be halted until we figure it out. Third screen, we're presented with yet a new obstacle. A bubble floats up near an unreachable ledge. Swinging at the bubble with our standard attack doesn't help. We learned from the previous screen that we have a shovel drop attack, and it's our only meaningful way to interact. So, we use it and we jump off the bubble. This gives us additional height and teaches us a new platforming mechanic. Last for our example comes a test of our knowledge with a shovel drop variation, a mini boss fight against a dragon that shoots bubbles. We learned previously that we're supposed to jump on bubbles with a shovel drop ability. Doing this against a dragon, we naturally discover that the most efficient way to fight it is by bouncing repeatedly off its head with a shovel drop. But that's not all. We also learned that certain enemies have weak spots, as only the dragon's head is vulnerable. All of this was taught to the player through game design, and not a single tutorial box was required to teach what needed to be done. This was only a small example of the skill the game developers for Shovel Knight had in teaching a player concepts in a natural and engaging way. In reality, every single stage has multiple new ideas and continuations of concepts being juggled at the same time, which proceed to build on one another in the following stages. It's incredibly impressive how they were able to manage such intentionality with their game design. The major benefit in crafting a game this way is that the players are learning in a completely natural way. Being presented with a puzzle and then being able to figure out on your own is a fun and rewarding experience and leaves a much bigger impact than a tutorial box. Now, does this mean that text boxes should never be used in a game? Well, of course not. Shovel Knight even has a few in select areas, but the areas in which they're used are used to deliver important information that would otherwise be difficult to convey through only gameplay. The issue is, a lot of modern game designers seem to have completely forgotten that you can convey information to the player through gameplay, and not just through a text box info dump. I don't know if you can relate to this, but I know when a game decides to just offload a bunch of tutorial information in a text box, my brain immediately shuts off. I understand sometimes it's a necessary evil to convey complicated or unintuitive information. But I feel in modern games the issue is the text box is seen as a good enough solution. It seems the passion for proper game design just isn't going to be there for a product that's intended to make money first and provide a fun and interesting gameplay experience second. I'd love to play more games with a focus on teaching the player through game mechanics, in a similar way to Shovel Knight. If you have any recommendations, Leave a comment down below for me to check out. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video enough to make it to the end, you should subscribe so you don't miss out on the next one. Thanks for watching.